So you'd be adding papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have to be separated. They
One
could all
real
be
quick
put
question.
mixed in.
Any word on what's going on with Waste Management as far as them opening up a?
It's open.
It's open.
Their transfer stations
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So we're going to be
We're
able to.
dumping there. Yeah. Since,
Oh, great.
Yeah, since
I wasn't
February.
aware
I think
that
we
they were
started.
open, okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Save us a lot of money with fuel. 'Cause
Yeah.
It was going to, where were they going before?
Neville Island.
Never,
Never.
Yeah.
They're saving us a ton of money in wear and tear on those two trucks, too.
That's
Yeah, them
great.
trucks are
Time,
currently
money, fuel,
2002s. And,
I think
you know,
both of
we've
them
been,
have them.
we've been nickel and diming them, keeping them on the
I
road.
think they both have over 140,000 miles on them, too.
Oh, you can get another 20 out of them, come on.
Yeah, we got our money out of them, that's right.
Anything else on recycling? Okay, next line is animal control. I don't know if you noticed, Mike was here, Tim had asked him to come and maybe explain or answer some questions as far as his details and duties.
You have my spot, Mike.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Hello. I just wanted to thank Tim for giving me the opportunity and for you to give me the opportunity to speak tonight. And there's been some discussion in newspaper article about the shelter. So I think Tim asked me to come because there was some confusion maybe over what we do here in Monroeville and what services we provide in the Animal Control Department and who runs the shelter, I guess, is one of the other big misconceptions. So I guess I would like to do a little overview of what the shelter does. This past year, we saw 74 dogs in the shelter, 55 cats, so all 55 of those cats got rehomed. We returned 75 dogs to owners, so that was between dogs that ran through the shelter and dogs that we picked up on the side of the road and returned immediately to owners. 39 dogs from the shelter got rehomed. So 55 cats and 39 dogs went to new owners that we picked up. We picked up 68 deer so far this year. Last year we picked up 74, so we're probably going to pick up about 80 deer off the road, roadkill deer, that kind of thing. Over 500 other animals. Raccoons, possums, skunks, turkeys, that kind of thing. There were 460 calls to dispatch as of last month to the dispatch center for animal-related incidents, 460 plus. And that doesn't include calls that came directly to the shelter.
Now, these calls are deer kills or
Anything from
raccoons?
deer
Okay.
kills to dog
Not-
barking
not
calls.
just dog
Rabid animals,
related or domestic.
dog bites, animals on the road.
Small squirrels.
So that's about
Ceiling.
40,
Yes. Yeah,
that's
animals
about
in people's
46
homes.
a month, Mike, right?
Yeah, so that's animals in homes, animals in outside residences that are sick, rabies, all those calls, those different calls that we have. In addition to that, we run a program that we work with the county on RAD issues in the municipality. We're probably one of the only municipalities that works as closely with the county. Next, I have a letter here, which I'll give a copy to Tim, and if anyone wants a copy of this letter from the county that shows the program that we have with the county to do that through the Animal Control Department. And we also work with the Ordinance Department. So between Mark Schufo and I, when we have a RAD issue here in Monroeville, him and I get together. I usually walk the properties, and we find out where the issue's coming from. We contact the county ourselves. And we usually handle the first contact with the residents. We find out how large the problem is. We educate the neighborhoods on what they need to change. We address any ordinance issues at that point, and if there are ordinance issues, then I would bring Mark in. Mark and I sit down, we write letters together that encompass forcing residents to bait, if that's the situation. Also, maintenance issues on the properties. And then we also generate a letter to the county and talk to Jeff that wrote this letter for us. They generate a PIN letter also. And that approach has seemed to work really well. All the problems we've had with rats here in Monroeville have been taken care of really quickly,
Mike,
whereas the other areas have issues.
Other communities, the county does their
Yes, the county.
rat
would-
control.
Yes, so if in another
So in
community.
a sense, they could do ours.
Well, what they do, that's not, they would do what they do for other communities, and like I said, if you read this letter, you'll see the difference between what we have and what they have.
Can you give us
that-
the 5,000-foot look, just so everybody kind of understands that? What do we get?
What we get different is we walk the properties immediately and we take care of the problem right away. If you call the county and in the other areas, when you call the county, they're in the same situation that we are, budget crunches. The number of people they have working for that county now is reduced significantly. So if someone would call with a complaint, they would eventually generate a PIN letter to those people. They wouldn't go out to the property. The people would get a PIN letter, and then if the complaint wasn't answered and the issues weren't taken care of, eventually someone from the county would make it out to those properties if the complaints continue.
And what is their normal response time?
Months. It could be months. Yeah.
And how many of those rodents would multiply?
Ooh, boy,
In
they
that period of
multiply
time.
fast.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and you can see, and he even addressed that issue we had in Garden City last year that made the paper. You know, we had about 20 houses involved in that incident, and within one season of that incident occurring, the problem's taken care of. Where in other communities that are having rat problems, the problem's just getting larger and larger. They're having more complaints, they're writing more PIN letters instead of having somebody go on the properties and take care of the problem immediately. And the other difference is that the cost to the residents is less because we go out and advise them how to do it. So if you don't have someone that shows people how to do it and the cost isn't low enough, the choice of them is to pay an exterminator to come in. If they can't afford to do that, they don't do it. So you don't have any resolution to the problem. You can cite eventually, if they end up citing if the problem gets larger and larger and larger, but they simply don't have the staffing to do that. They don't have the staffing to walk the properties and actually handle the problem. So we've gotten to a point with the county that we have their ear also. When we have a problem and I need those letters written, I get those letters written almost immediately because we've helped them out and we have a working relationship with them. And he knows if I walk those properties, he can write a letter and have accurate information immediately, whereas in other communities, they don't have someone to go out and do that, and he has to wait until he can get out there on those properties and do that work. I'll give you a copy of this letter and you can.
Well, there's no doubt the county's going to love us because that's saving them their manpower and everything. So, yeah, I'm sure
Well, they're still doing
they're in
what-
favor of it.
Well, they're, on top of that, though, they're still doing what they would normally do, but what they do doesn't take care of the problem. It doesn't get out there and get the issues
Right.
fixed. So,
How many people are willing to walk the property to find out where their rodent issues are?
well,
I don't think there's a whole lot of people.
And the residents themselves are
Right.
happy to have someone out there where, you know, when you have that issue, we have somebody that walks on the property. We're the only animal control out there that's going to handle the wildlife issues that we handle too on a regular basis. And most of those
Well, that-
issues are handled on regular time. So one of the big issues I think has been, and the misconceptions, first of all, is that the shelter also is run by volunteers and the shelter is not run by volunteers. We do have volunteers that enhance what we do at the shelter, but the shelter is administrated by myself, and Mike can attest to that. And actually, Steve, the state dog warden, is here in the audience tonight too, because he's aware that the shelter is not run by volunteers. We have awesome volunteers that do some great things for us. It
I
improves
recognize some of this, Mike.
Yes. Sure. And it does enhance what we do at the shelter and help us to do a better job, but we're working in conjunction with them and the state and all these other agencies to do the best job we can. We're the last municipally run shelter. So if we lose animal control and we don't have our own animal control anymore, then that shelter will also perish.
You answer calls on pet kennels?
And if we want to get to revenue, we can discuss revenues also, where we're at with the revenue, why we have the overtime that we have. But the shelter itself is the big thing that I think everyone would hate to see go, but also the service to residents. When they call and they have an issue, or when they call and their dog gets picked up by an animal control officer that's not our animal control officer, there's 75 people that had dogs picked up this year in Monroeville. Every time one of those dogs gets picked up here in Monroeville, there's a chance that that dog's going to be euthanized before the owner ever gets that dog back.
Picked up by
Cats
who?
and cats picked up, if we went to,
What he's
Oh, you're
a
saying if
contractor.
we did?
if we did that, if we
Oh, I
changed
thought you were
what we
saying that
had.
happened.
No, here in
Okay.
Monroeville, that never happens.
So
Okay.
you're saying every one of them do that?
Every one of those contractors, yes. They have a 48-hour window that they need to keep that dog, and then they can euthanize it, or they can pass it on to someone else, and there's no recourse by the resident at all.
So
And
then-
cats are a completely another, cats, they don't need to keep them for 15 minutes. If you're a cat owner, your cat got outside accidentally, He comes by and picks up that cat, he can euthanize it immediately, and you have no recourse.
Hey, Mike,
That's the system.
I think one of the main issues is the overtime.
Sure, and we have addressed
And
the
that's-
overtime.
No, and that's what we talked about.
Yes.
And we may have strayed more from domestic animals and got into more of a wildlife thing than what was originally presented as an animal control shelter. You know, as far as the rats,
Well, the rat work,
turkeys,
the
the
rat
deer.
work generates no overtime. What generates overtime is emergency situations. And we've been through a couple discussions about costs for overtime in the past. We have a memorandum of understanding that was with one of the older, with Marshall Bond,
okay.
about what we were called for. First of all, and there's a couple misconceptions about what we have in overtime. First of all, last year, for whatever reason we had a lot of overtime. We had about $20,000 in overtime. This year, we're actually projected, which the mayor said that the costs were going up, the costs are going down. We're projected probably around $16,000 in overtime this year.
Okay.
Yeah, but also
as
we're
of-
buying a $60,000 vehicle too.
But we're not talking about vehicles, we're talking about overtime.
As of
Use that number.
July this year, you had
Get out.
360
You're
hours.
not going to say that to me.
Well, no,
Mike.
that was the number we used.
Michael.
I'm saying that $20,000 number is not going to be what it was last year. It's
As
going
of
to be less than
July
that.
of this year, you had 360 some hours overtime. And if you
Not-
double that, that was in 6 months, so let's say 700 hours, 600 hours overtime per year. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
is
well,
just
right
the
now,
overtime.
well, right now,
Well,
currently.
my only thing is with, like, the public are aware, you get 2-hour minimum calls.
That's
So
correct.
if you're called out for a deer to pick up a deer carcass, you get a 2-hour.
Well, we're not being called out for deer carcasses unless they're
You're not?
unless they're in front of a business or they're on somebody's private property,
They're
personal
only
property.
being let go the
Likelihood
next
of
day.
that
Yeah,
happening
most of them are
is
being left to
very
the next
high.
day.
Yeah, unless it's in a
No, yeah,
resident's
exactly.
yard or a resident's driveway.
Where do they get hit?
Well,
Oh, no, the majority of them are picked up in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
a
mean,
lot of the
are-
calls
are
that we get-
officers
a lot of-
pulling them off the road?
Here's the and I don't think a lot of people realize, the process for me to get called out for overtime is this. If an animal control issue comes into dispatch sends an officer. A police officer goes to that call. They get to that call and they assess the situation. If at that point they decide that they may need the animal control officer, they call in and they need to pass that by a supervisor. That supervisor then decides whether or not it's an issue which, in the memorandum we have, is a public safety issue, or if it falls under those guidelines. A funeral home, a business, if it's in a place at someone's house that
I
it's.
think we have to look into that. I have
I have it right here.
I have a scanner at home, and I'll hear, a deer's hit by a car. Call the animal control.
That's not true. We're not getting calls for those calls. You want me to, I can pull the calls. And the other misconception is that it's being caused by traps. I have not had a trap of ours out in the municipality or one out for a municipal trap on overtime. I haven't even had a trap leave the shelter in 3.5 months.
My only question with that.
Not one trap.
How did you manage to get so many hours of overtime I'm listening to everything that you have to
Well,
say. but how
because
did you get so
I'm
many
on
hours of
call
overtime?
24/7, 365 days a year. So if we have a rabid animal, okay, just taking the last couple weeks of time, if you have a rabid animal in Lowe's parking lot, and the police officer goes out and it's not in a place where he can get the animal to a place that he can handle it, then they call animal control. Now, if they have a deer on the side of the road that gets hit and it needs shot, they shoot it themselves, they drag it to the side of the road, they leave me a sheet in the morning and I pick it up.
The police drag it to the side of the road? That was one
Yes.
of my questions.
Absolutely, yeah. We get, in the past 4 days, I've gotten 7 deer, and not one of them generated 1 hour of overtime.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's,
so
No, you don't take the vehicle at home. If you took the vehicle at home.
He does. He
Oh,
does
you
take
do
it.
Well,
take it
I'm
home?
allowed to. I don't generally take the vehicle home.
I
There are days
just
that
wondered
I
if it
do,
would
and I'm
save,
allowed to if I
if
want
there
to.
could be any savings in time if you were able to take the vehicle home.
Well, we have a 2-hour call-out. But in a lot of
Where
cases.
was that-
Contract, there's a
2 hours
2-hour
covered.
minimum.
Where was that set?
It's
How was
always
that
been
set?
that.
In a contract.
That's
union contract.
In the public
Union
work.
contract.
By the union contract.
But also, when I get called, if you would look at the calls that we have too, a lot of times when they call me, they'll call me, when I clean and feed on the weekend, they'll call me and they'll double me up with another call, and it's all in the same 2 hours. Or if they call me at night and there's a deer in someone's yard, and they called me for a dog that got caught, then they tag that deer onto it and I do both calls.
And you don't charge double on
No,
top?
no, we get charged
Okay,
one
but
time.
we do have some reimbursement to the overtime for what Pitcairn,
Well, and
when you
that's
go to
another
Pitcairn,
issue.
correct?
Yeah, and the overtime, now, right now, from revenue from Pitcairn, we're at $4,200, $4,282.40.
Where is that?
$2,729 of that.
Where is that,
yeah,
Mike?
where is that at?
Where is that in the budget?
I don't know where.
That should
they're
be in the
putting that
revenue. It's
That
back in the
revenue's never
revenues,
been a
Nick.
line item back into to
There is
offset the
now.
cost.
It's in, if you look at 3350, on page 1, it has, it's budgeted for 5,500. Now, that was, Sean, did we figure that out?
Here it is.
That was the ballpark
Here.
of
Is it
5,500
this?
for the revenue produced from the Pitcairn kennel, kenneling of the Pitcairn animals or whatever?
Yeah, I actually was mistaken, Paul. When you and I spoke, I thought that there was a monthly stipend that came in from Pitcairn, but it's on a per-call basis that they pay a fee. I was mistaken.
And how much
Okay,
is
that's
that?
fine.
How much
Hey,
is that?
Mike,
It's $62.50 an hour, and it's we charge them 2 hours for every call on regular time, and when they call us for overtime, it's $80.28 an hour. It's
Does that include any wear and tear and gasoline for the
What he's
vehicles?
done
That's
is
the total
double on
cost.
his 2 hours. Say he gets $80 for the 2 hours to go down there, it's a $160 charge to pick
Okay,
it.
so that's covering some of the costs for the vehicle itself?
Well, it's covering the cost of us running the call. So, it's not reflected in the cost of the vehicle. It's just simply a
well, it's
a
actually
revenue stream.
more than covering the cost.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's doubling
Okay.
the cost. so
It's
it would
doubling the
cover
cost of
vehicle.
me to go out to do that.
Okay, now,
Yes.
on the weekends, you say you go in there and you have to, you feed and all of that, the animals?
Yes.
And we get charged
2
overtime?
hours.
Two,
But what-
2 hours a time and a half?
2 hours at a time and a half on the weekends for Saturdays and Sundays. But the other thing that they don't realize too is that when you do this job is 24 hours a day, 7
Right.
days a week. And I'm a volunteer as much as I'm an animal control officer because we have live animals at the shelter. So when we go in on a Saturday, I go in and I clean and feed in the morning. Every night I go back again. Now, I don't charge again for that time because, that's the job I've taken. And if we're going to have live animals there, they can't be taken care of. You can't go in the morning and take care of animals, and especially when we're in a situation like we are now. We have 17 animals. We have 17 dogs and 8 cats at the shelter right now. You can't go in the morning and clean for 2 hours in the morning and then not go back and check on those animals
Okay, but
until the
it
next
seems to
morning.
me the bulk of the overtime cost is coming from the weekends. I mean, that's like set time. Every single weekend.
It's 4 hours of time on the weekends, yes.
4 or 6?
It's
4.
No, no.
2 Saturdays.
It's-
It's 2 in the morning, or 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday.
But
even
at
though we're
time and
going
a
back.
half.
At time and a half, yes.
So that's 6 hours. That's 3 each day,
Well, yeah.
right? I
Yes.
mean, it's considered 3 hours.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any way we could work the program with the volunteers, that the volunteers do some of that, and that takes away from some of the overtime? Because that's where we're having the problem, is in the large cost of the overtime.
But the total cost of the overtime compared to what you're getting is not a large cost.
Okay, but that didn't answer my question. Is there any way we could work it
Well,
with,
but we've discussed that before in the past, and you can't have a volunteer do union work. That was the discussion, that was the issue in the past, because
Okay.
you're actually having someone, and someone has to walk through the shelter that is
We need to
taken care
curtail
of.
overtime is what we're
That's
saying in
what
all
we're
departments.
we want to keep
So we're
the
not here to
shelter
argue
going.
with
We
you
want
as
to
far
keep
as
the
what a
position open. We
volunteer-
want the services. We have to find a way to get the cost under control. So we are basically asking for your help for ideas. I
Well,
mean, I'm
this is-
trying to present you some.
And I think that the better idea than trying to not have someone in that shelter that is qualified to make sure we're making the right decisions would be to look for other revenue streams for the shelter. And we've talked about this in the past.
I
Charging
don't know
for
who, you
trap-
keep saying we, I'm
charging fee-
confused.
Well, we've talked, Tim and I have talked about it, Mike and I have talked, there's been discussions in the past with other managers, too, about revenue streams. Some of the ideas that were passed around, first of all, there are grants that are available for shelters that Tim and I discussed earlier, and Tim kind of put us on hold until we got through this process of whether we were going to have a shelter or not. There was no point in in.
There was never any talk
yeah,
of eliminating the shelter. Let me
No,
clear you on
never.
this.
Well,
Never.
I think you
Never.
need to, I think
Never.
you need to make it clear that with no animal control, there'll be no shelter. We've
That
we've
is-
had a lot of discussions about that.
That is unequivocal. If you contract this out, the shelter goes away.
Yeah, there'll be no shelter.
There's no shelter.
There's
Well,
no
that was
possible
never
way to run a.
discussed.
No,
Never
it wasn't
discussed.
discussed. No, that was never,
Whether there's shelters.
that was never discussed. However,
By
that,
volunteers, yeah, there's no such
that
thing as
has
a
come to a
volunteer-run shelter.
realization that that is
Yeah,
going to happen. If we contract this out, the shelter is going to go away.
I always thought that.
Absolutely. When you start talking about contracting animal control out, and you get a subcontractor in here, the way that they generate revenue is when they get your dog, they get paid by the state to hold that dog for 2 days. They get $20 a day. And their other source of revenue is, once they hold that dog, they charge the resident. They charge the person who owned that dog, and that's how their revenue stream comes in. The charge of $500 or $600 a month that gets you from 8 to 4, and the calls that they run, that doesn't pay the bills for them. So for them to take a dog that they got and put it in a shelter that we run, first of all, they're not going to do that because it destroys their revenue stream. Secondly, now you're trying to run a shelter, which is a shelter that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With volunteers, it's simply not a feasible. There's no shelters that out there that run without a paid employee, at least.
Okay, but we just need to find a way to curtail some of this cost because we can't keep absorbing it.
Well,
And we
most
want
of
to
these
keep
calls
it.
come through the dispatch center, whether the
I think our
supervisor.
dispatchers need to be trained to.
Well, we
Is
gotta
that
change
another
something
answer?
there. Yeah, you know what I mean? There's got to be something changed. There is like I said, a written agreement that back when George Polner was chief, what animal control should be called out for.
I do know that the state, when there's a deer kill, it's $25 for a company. Let's not talk about closing the center. I'm not in favor of that.
And that real,
Let's not talk about domestic.
No
Let's
way.
talk about the deer, the raccoons, the dead animals. They
I've
could-
never-
They could generate overtime and possibly curtail that, is
I
what
have
we're trying to
never-
do here.
I have never once had anybody tell me that if we lose the animal control officer, we lose the shelter. No one has ever one time.
No,
said
I
that.
agree.
That's a
Absolutely.
great.
I know you.
Absolutely.
100%, I've
I'm
never
just
heard
telling
that.
you, no one has ever
Well,
said that.
that's because they've
Now,
given you bad information. Absolutely, if
Tim
you
just
get rid
said
of
it.
animal
Tim just
control, you
told
will
us.
not
I'm just
have the
saying, that's
animals
never
to put
been
in the
told.
shelter. There'll be no, and you don't have the personnel to run
And
a
I just
shelter.
want to make that clear. I never stated that I would ever close it.
Okay,
I always
what's
said
with
keep
these
it open.
grants?
You
Why
stated,
why
though, that
haven't
you
we?
were
never-
completely-
we've
Why have we never applied for grants? Since you're saying there's grants available, why have we never?
Because we've been in this process where they've stopped us from moving forward.
Again,
Years? We've
I
never?
just got involved in this, so, and it's never been an issue in the past, so.
Can I make
When
this statement?
when this started to become a discussion that the cost of it was an issue,
Mm-hmm.
I brought up the idea of going out and doing those things, and we kind of put the whole thing, the brakes on it, until we decided whether we were even going to be in the budget at all. Because without, the shelter is where we would get the grants.
what would make
to
you
offset
think
the
you wouldn't
cost.
be in the budget?
Well, yeah, we even
There's
ordered a
been-
new truck.
Yeah, because there's been discussion since Tim came back and prior to that.
And what-
And Tim and I have sat in numerous meetings discussing how, what we would do if that was the case. So this has been
Are we misinformed or something?
I
Absolutely, that's why
obviously
I'm
was
here.
misinformed, but I would like to relay this, that if animal control would go out to bid, and I'm not in favor of it by any means, the shelter does not necessarily have to close. You could hire a part-timer to keep that shelter itself open. And you could, Mike, with the volunteers.
Without-
I'm not saying
No,
that
no.
I am in favor of
There's
that,
there'll be no
but everything was
animals.
negative, like the shelter's going to close. That shelter is not
We've
going
all
to close.
talked about this. Tim and I have had discussion to figure out whether that was even a possibility, and we figured out in the end, there will not be a shelter. If there's
What-
no animal control here, that will change.
If I
I'm
could-
telling you, there would be.
Counsel, if, what's going to happen is, and Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong here, what will happen is nobody will bid. If you send this out for RFP and you say you drop it off at our shelter because of the financial implications, they will not get revenue from the state because they will not be taking the animals to their shelter. Am I correct,
Yes.
Mike? Okay. So what I envision seeing is that you will know, but nobody will bid on it. So, and as far as, Mr. Johns is correct, there has been no discussion about the shelter will go away. But when I emailed council a couple of weeks ago that we cannot do the RFP right now because we don't know what's going to go on with the shelter. That was on a Friday, 2 weeks ago, this coming Friday, that I emailed council to that effect. I knew then, and corroborated that with Mike, that if we put this out for RFP, the shelter will go away because there will be no, or you just will keep it because nobody is going to bid on an RFP. And I have not had any discussions with council. You are correct on that, JJ. But I was going to, through this conversation this evening, I was going to tell council that tonight during the course of the conversation, which I have.
And I would also like to make it perfectly clear, Mike, and you know it has been myself and JJ's talked about it, and so has Steve, about looking on the outside. We've talked amongst each other. I know I've said it publicly, but I also said, I'm not saying we're going to do that, but
I've
what
never
would hurt
talked
to
of
look.
outsourcing. I've
Talk
never
to me
talked of
about it, Steve.
outsourcing it. I was talking in frames of limiting the overtime.
Well, let me just finish, and then you can say, I guess the bottom line is, you've obviously educated, I think, all of us on some of these issues that I didn't know, that we didn't have, and discussion just didn't start today. This has been going on, if you remember, over the last month or two. We should have done this a long time ago.
Well, and this discussion has been going on longer than that between Tim and I.
I'm just talking about currently what's going on with, even taking a look outside.
Well, and taking a
Obviously,
look
it doesn't
outside,
say-
and taking a look outside, you need to understand that when you go from what we have to taking a look outside, here's the difference. A simple example. If you have an outside contractor, and there are two in this area that would be capable of bidding it and doing it here because of logistics. One of those two contractors, your dog runs out of your house. It's running in the neighborhood. They come, they pick that dog up. They take it to their shelter. Now, they have 48 hours they need to hold that dog.
And they don't need to notify you either,
They do
correct?
not need to notify you, but you can try and call them. Now, both of those contractors, you can look at their reputations and decide whether you think that they're the people you'd like to have your dog in their custody. I'll leave that to you. But if they get your dog 48 hours, they hold it. Once they've held it for 48 hours, they can do two things with it. They can try and pass it on to someone else, a shelter. They cannot adopt the dogs out. Neither of those people have the ability to adopt a dog to someone. They need to give it to a shelter that can adopt it to them.
And
Then
we
the
do,
dog-
we do adoptions.
No, we do adoptions at our shelter,
Mm-hmm.
but those people don't do adoptions. So now they're trying to reach out to all these other organizations to find places to put dogs. So they either put your dog in one of those shelters, or it's even easier, they euthanize it.
I have a two-part question, and can we let him answer it? If you get my dog,
Yes.
how long do you keep it?
I'll keep it forever.
First of all, that's not a dog.
My horse?
Your
Yes.
horse.
Yeah. Second question, second part, is do you charge, if I find out you have it and I want to come get it, do you charge me a little fee?
No, that's one of the things I think we can talk about as far as revenue streams.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, I've been kind of discouraged to charge residents a kennel fee for a dog they're looking for. So if you lost your dog and you're a resident here, and I return it to you, they've really haven't, it hasn't been something that they really wanted me to charge the resident for.
I can tell you personally, if you found my girl, and I'd give you $50 to get her back. And thank you
Absolutely.
very much that you
And I agree with
kept
that.
my dog.
Yes. Not to mention that,
Good point, Paul.
we're going to look for you as an owner. We know the neighborhoods. We know a lot of the people know other dogs. We're going to ask, we're going to look. Plus, if we don't find it, we're going to keep the dog for an extended period of time. And then if we don't, we're going to be putting it on Facebook and other places looking for you as the owner. And if we don't find you as an owner, we're going to have the dog spayed or neutered. We're going to get it all at shots with the fund. We have a nonprofit little fund that we use to do that. So there's no cost to the municipality to do that. And then we find it a home. So, and we also have no cost for food, because I've gone out to the local pet stores and that Burton's gives us food, Petland gives us food. We don't pay for any food anymore. We don't pay for any medical costs for dogs anymore, because we went out And we, through this fund and through the partnerships we've made with one of the vets and spay and neuter clinic, we take that fund money and we recover that in costs that we get back for adopting those dogs out. So we've eliminated that as a source of, that we have to spend on the dogs.
When you adopt a stray out, because you said that you get, if you get one in, they get shots, spayed, neutered, and then you find a forever home for the animal?
Sure.
Do you charge anything for that?
Yes, we do. We charge, the cost goes back into our fund. Now, Monroeville doesn't get that money, it goes back into the fund because we paid for it out of the fund, it goes back. And then we ask for a donation for our fund for the animals that we have that we don't find homes for or that need a bigger surgery or more medical care, more vet care, then it all comes out of that fund. So we've eliminated all those other costs, so you're getting, on top of what you're getting with all the animal control and all the things you get. I mean, I think that when you talk about the overtime, you need to realize that a lot of the overtime is generated from calls that it's a public safety issue. And if we would go back and pull those calls, and I can do that for you, and we can present the rest of that information to find out how many of those calls are actually nonsense calls for something that we're just going out for, we could go out for another time, or how many of those calls are calls that a police officer went out to, stood in a yard with an animal that's rabid, or an animal that's in a position or a place for a business or a homeowner that it's simply not a good idea to leave it there from Friday night till Monday morning. And those calls, of course, or if we have a dog bite or a dog attack, those kind of things, we should be called because the police, even by their own admission, they're not as versed in the dog law as we are, and we need to be on those calls and get all the information that we need to move forward. So when you look at the calls from overtime, I know we're looking to get rid of that overtime, and we've done a lot to try and get it down. We're down, like I said, our totals are going to be more like, mine are going to be more like 16 from 20. So we're going to be like $4,000 down by the end of the year with that overtime. And I think we can do some things to try and trim that overtime. But I think if we're still going to provide the service and for the things that we have that are public safety issues, we're still going to have overtime if we want to continue to do that.
I don't think anyone's asking you to get it down to zero.
Exactly.
I mean, that's not going to happen.
But on top of that, we're trying to do everything we can with the rest of what we have in our program to make the money that you spend go as far as we possibly can by doing the rat stuff, by picking up some of the weight that the ordinance department has to take.
The whole thing that this started from was when we seen the amount of overtime, 700 hours a year. And I understand what a great job. I've been part of this for 30-some years. I know the animal control. I'd never be against, I love animals. I have dogs, cats, the whole 9 yards.
But when we looked back historically at overtime for animal control,
700 hours. We're just looking at a way to cut it back. We're not.
But
you don't have to
historically, it
defend
hasn't been. I mean, actually, there's years that were a lot higher in time because wages have gone up and things have changed. Economically, it's gotten, the number looks bigger, but the number of hours of overtime are less. And if you look at overtime as a whole, just people that do, on our Public Works Department, that just do snow removal for the year have over 100 hours of overtime. So when you're looking at a number of 300 hours of overtime for me, and then it's not 700. No, there's no 700.
Well, you were at 360 as of July.
I'm at, no, that's not correct.
Well, then I was given the wrong thing.
That's not correct at all. Those numbers are not even close to the numbers. My numbers of overtime right now are like 300.
No, it's overtime for the shelter. You give a lot
And
away.
the other people
You give
that
a
have
lot
it have-
away to
No, I
other
don't give a lot
employees.
away.
I mean, some you do.
Very little.
If I
You
could
can
offer
ask
a
Mike,
suggestion.
how much overtime are we at right now? And we can get real figures.
I
for it.
had,
It's
I
not-
thought I had that with me, I don't have it.
It's not 2.5 times my total. My total was just
It
under
was
300.
given to me at 360 as of July. I'm just telling you what was given to me.
That's absolutely wrong.
That's when I seen it. That's when I said.
No, that's
wow,
not,
we've
that
gotta
is
do
not the
something.
right number. That number is incorrect.
I could offer-
That's why I said, I think you need to understand, let's get real numbers and talk about how much we can trim it. We have trimmed it a lot, but it's not, 700 is not the number.
I could
Okay,
have- I
and
could
can
have
we,
Sally
and
pull the
let's
numbers
look
in
into
the
these
morning.
grants and stuff. The revenue streams, that will also help offset some of the costs. I think everybody wants to work with this. We've already approved the vehicle.
Well, and that's what our big issue was, like I said, some of the things that council and have been put out there as what the numbers were, first of all, and the cost for overtime. Like I said, the total cost for my overtime, for my part of the overtime was 20, and there was a couple $1,000s of overtime that went out to other people. And I know that sounds like a big number, but when you whittle it down to the calls that we had, and this year being even less, 16, It's going to be considerably less again this year, and if we carry those same principles that we put into play these last couple months that we've been in this, no traps out after time, and being a lot more diligent about just going out to those calls that are calls for emergencies, then I think you're going to see a little bit of a change in that overtime. I think you're still going to have it there because the majority of the calls that we're running now are public safety calls.
Well, I think the biggest problem is the weekend charges. I mean, that adds up to a lot of money,
I think,
if
Mike,
it has to be
And
time and a
things could be
half.
changed, contracts come up and we could,
That's
write
where
up
I
different
think we
things that-
can, we can work together to try to make this, look better on paper, look better to everybody. That's at least
think
my
that's all
idea. I don't know what else everyone else has, but
Pretty sure everybody's in agreement. We don't want to lose you and/or the animal shelter. I was certainly had no idea.
See,
Animal
no,
shelter.
nobody
I
had that
was never told
information.
that.
And it sounds like we just need to tighten some things
we
up
just need-
administratively and managerially, and maybe come up with some of the suggestions you made as far as revenue streams and see ways to
Well,
expand it.
absolutely.
We have to sit down and look at what revenues we can get.
Yes.
I mean, we're on a month-to-month contract with Pitcairn. I mean, that could surely change. I mean, they're getting a hell of a deal for what, and to keep it on an on-call basis is a good thing, but we could still add something to that. And they ain't
Yes.
getting that deal with any other
right,
contractor.
right.
Well, you also need to look at that cost to Pitcairn. Just by us doing the very basics for Pitcairn, they're going to be $5,000 in animal control, and you have people telling you that you can get your animal control done by a subcontractor for $5,000. That is not a feasible number. And that number is going to be just the basics.
That's what we were just told. So,
Exactly,
yeah,
and that
you know,
number, yeah.
We
when
don't
you-
know, I didn't know.
So we need to make some adjustments on, all the way around. That's really,
agree.
I think, all that we're talking about.
Yeah, and like I said, I
I think we're,
that-
I think everyone's
also
happy with the
realizing-
service and all that's provided with it. We just need to trim it and, just streamline things a little better.
Absolutely, but I mean, but on the other hand, too, you also have to look at animal control like you look at the police department. There are times when there are more times, I think, than you're aware of, that you have an animal or a situation with an animal that it's a public safety issue.
Well, we
And
don't
have
want you not
offic-
to go out then. We want
Yeah,
you to go out.
but
We
I-
don't
but
want,
so- But I'm saying that even already, all those calls that are being generated are already going through that two-step process where you have an officer on scene, and he makes a determination that this is something I can't handle, and then passing it on to a supervisor, who then reevaluates it and says, and a lot of times those supervisors are still doing that. They're turning that time down. They're saying, you know what, I don't think that's a good enough reason, let it go, or wait, and we'll see what happens. So we already have a process for doing that, and it's working, but we still are going to have overtime generated by it.
Mike,
Agreed.
if I may suggest that maybe you and Mike Adams sit down and come up with some kind of a plan that
Stole my thunder, Mr.
that works for everybody. Yeah.
I think-
Well, I mean, to control the
great,
overtime.
Great. No, I was going to suggest, notwithstanding a deer call tonight and tomorrow morning, you have to take a carcass off of or take a deer off the road tomorrow morning. If you guys could be in my office at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll put something together. We'll have it for council next Thursday as to what we can do to curb the overtime.
We find out what the
And
real
look at some
overtime
revenue
number is.
streams.
Yeah, well, I can
That's-
get that.
Yeah, we
That's
need the
right
real
on the
revenue.
And I
computer.
think
You know
that
what else,
goes
Mike?
with making
Look-
the leap from
I could get that
saying you're a
first.
resident,
Take out of
let's
that number
not charge
what's
you
gone to
something, or-
Pitcairn as
and
well.
What's that,
two,
Ron?
So it's not all
There's a
Monroe will
cost
charge
involved
overtime.
with the compassionate.
You know,
we
make
You
it
do.
don't have an
more-
accurate
so
number.
it's
I'd like to
realistic
hear
to
what the total
everybody.
Number I received,
Okay.
Mr. Little could get us the number of overtime for that
In
department.
overtime, they
I've already
paid us
given it to
20, the overtime
Council, we're
calls
all
generated
talking. Let's go one at a time.
$2,729.
Okay.
So it was a good portion. We've been called, I mean, that should give you a little idea of when we're needed more.
Right.
When you look at Pitcairn's calls, they've spent $4,282 this year total,
Mm-hmm.
and $2,729 of that total, which is more than half of it,
Was overtime
was
calls.
overtime
overtime,
calls.
yeah.
So
So that's been
our calls are going to
reimbursed
be the
plus.
same way.
Can
Okay.
I suggest something, as Mr. Little said? We've probably beat this pretty good. I think
agree.
what you all need to do, you and Mike, sit with Tim, put some stuff together to try to look at reducing the overtime, look at some revenue streams, come back and see us.
Please, that would be great.
Thursday.
Yeah,
That's
that'd be
my
great.
idea.
And if
Mike,
that-
I think you did a great job. You
Yeah.
explained a lot of
Which may,
things.
which may
None of
mean,
us knew.
which
Well,
may
thank you for the
mean
time. I appreciate it. I
modifying
do.
the fee schedule for 15.
Yes. Yes.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Mike.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good night.
You need a 5-minute break.
And thanks to the,
We got two more departments to go through.
and thanks to the volunteers of the animal shelter.
If we can
Thank you, volunteers.
Thanks,
Okay,
volunteers.
Thank you,
council, what we're
volunteers.
gonna do is, we're gonna let Mike finish. He has two more departments. She needs a little bit of a break. So,
Yeah, page 42A is building maintenance.
Oh, I have, yeah, that
Four
was,
employees,
okay. That was where my electricity question came up again, but now that we're putting it more where
Yeah.
it belongs, that question's
that all
already
gets
gets
done
answered.
through this building,
Yeah.
through finance, and they allocate.
Okay.
There is a couple increases in the building maintenance repair lines. 5,000 in the building maintenance repair and the miscellaneous equipment.
Building equipment, okay.
That'd be 26002613.
Okay, now how did we drop the cleaning service so much?
Well, because we don't have a cleaning service, we have an in-house. now.
Okay,
And that basically, $10,000 we use for cleaning.
so, and that's
Period.
in-house now, okay.
Council, any other questions for Mike on building
I do.
maintenance?
Mike, noticing that you have employees that work with the pool, are they certified by the county
For,
to work with the pool and to correctly put the chemicals in and things like that?
no, that's
I know
not,
the school
our
district.
department,
Pardon me?
our department doesn't do that. Paul has,
That's recreation.
Parks
Who
and
does
Rec.
that?
Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, okay. Do we have a certified
Yeah,
person?
well, Paul's certified himself.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on building maintenance, Council? Michael, if you'll move on.
Okay, Community Park is our last one. There's 3 employees, including 1 foreman within the 3. We did add some $1,000 to tree maintenance. We have a lot of the trees along that runway that are dying off that we have to replace. And
Other than
basically,
that, it looks
the other
pretty
numbers are all the same.
Council, any questions for Michael on the community park? It looks fairly similar. I guess there's just some small increases, obviously, with the contracts and stuff, but other than that,
Looks good, Mike. I think you've been
Council,
through it.
I did almost forget, back in the vehicle equipment maintenance, which we did forget when we discussed with Tim and Sean, we have GPSs, 35 of them in our vehicles.
We have
And,
35 total?
Yeah, 35 total, and we had some money left over last year, towards the end of last October. We had paid a year in advance, one lump sum. Currently, it's about 9,700 a year that we
Yeah,
have to
Mike.
budget. We have to budget about $10,000.
Where you at, Mike?
We don't have it in there, that's what I'm telling you, we
Oh.
have to add. We have
Oh,
to
we
add that
need
too.
another $10,000
Yeah,
for
but we could
GPS.
put that under miscellaneous other operation services at like 2910.
Sounds like too little, too late to me, buddy. Sorry.
That's for the GPSs, right?
So we need.
Yeah,
And that's
I mean,
just for the
like-
actual physical GPSs.
That-
That's not,
that-
that's not
that's
the
the
monitoring
fee.
system?
that's for everything.
That's everything, all in?
Yeah.
Okay.
The units are installed and you can monitor it through the computer.
About how many,
35.
35.
once again, Council, any other questions for Michael on any
Well,
of
that's
these?
something I'm going to have to get with Sean and Tim to add 10,000 if council's okay with that.
No, that's fine.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Gaddis asked about possible revenue streams in these different departments. It wasn't talked about that liquid fuels money goes to a portion of their expenditures, and next year, as I said in my little summation, it's 600 and I think it was 81,000. And the current allocation of that money is for street lighting, traffic signals, and snow removal materials. So there is some offsetting revenue for some of the expenditures that Mike's department goes through. I just
Okay.
wanted to make that point clear. When Linda had asked about, is there an opportunity for revenue, there is.
Okay.
Yeah, see, that was never explained to us before, whether the liquid fuels went to these departments or not in the past.
So you're liking the breakout, the new breakout then? Because it's, I mean, all these departments and seeing everything.
Yeah, like I said, it may have went there before, but it was never explained to us.
Right, right. Okay. Mike, thank you for all the work.
Okay.
Okay, ladies and
Thank you.
gentlemen, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to give Sharon's fingers a rest.
Say goodbye to my wife.
Meeting's back in order. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to change a little bit of the order. We're going to have our fire chiefs come on up. Obviously, they're our volunteers, and sorry to our staff. You'll have to hang in there with us.
I'll take the blame.
That's not fair. That's not fair to the
Blake
Recreation
Harrell.
Department.
What page we on?
2,200.
Tim, where are we going?
Thank you.
Gentlemen, if you'll proceed.
Fire suppression, which is category 2,400.
Need a page, brother.
2,200.
Oops, I'm sorry, 2,200. Got the pages
What
mixed
page?
up here.
Are we in revenue?
Look at the bottom.
Page
26A.
number 26A.
26A.
If you look at last year, we're asking for basically the same on all line items, except for automobile repair and maintenance, an extra $5,000 in parts. And then on fuel, I understand everything's being recalculated, and they increased fuel by about $8,000 for fuel, oil, and everything. Hopefully that's correct.
Hey, Harold, just bear with me for 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Because you brought up automobile repairs and maintenance. If this thing with the heavy mechanic works out, that would help that, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. The heavy mechanic, if there is somebody there that can handle the trucks and more quickly than what's going on now with people being injured and everything, that should possibly reduce the outside services that we have to send the vehicles out for. And it would be a plus also in getting the vehicles back quicker and more efficiently, yes.
Okay.
I don't know what the dollar value of savings would be, Paul, but
Yeah,
it's
I know.
going to be definitely there. The other thing that we have mentioned year after year on that is, if you have enough staff, we have ways that we can, at no cost, get these people trained to do the pump repair and some of the specialty work on the fire trucks, that they can learn it and do more repairs, so we wouldn't have to have outside services do those specialty repairs. And the companies that actually manufacture the pumps have actually said to us, if we're willing to send them out to the other side of Pennsylvania to the manufacturer, that they will let them go through the classes and everything, teach them how, certify them to do the work, and it could save us funding that way too.
Wow.
At this point, we've made that recommendation, I would say, for about the last 8 years. And it's never happened to add people to the garage. They took one out instead. So, so that's a possibility with the new person, whoever it might be, so.
Questions, council, for fire suppression?
Ambulance service, which is page 29A. And the only thing that I saw in here is there is telephone in the budget. If you noticed, we used $400 and some worth of telephone. There should not be any telephone left. The fire departments pay for the telephones and also the wireless cards for the computer system.
So the 2,300 would be eliminated?
I see telephone COPDs on there as
Telephone, telegraph.
1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That can be deleted.
that could be.
Okay.
I'm sorry if you don't want me to.
We can
Thank you, Harold.
delete something.
The
I like
rest-
that.
The rest of the budget is, it's almost identical to before. Contract service fees, we asked to go from 1,200 to 1,500. Medical equipment, if you notice on the bottom, we asked for it to go from 3,300 to 5,000. There is a requirement that every one of the stretchers that we have to be tested and under a service agreement from the liability standpoint and by the EMS standpoint. There should be a third party that actually addresses that. So our cost there, we said, was going to be another like $2,000 a year total. So that's why it's up a little bit there. Other than that, all the other numbers you'll see are right in line with where they have been
Now, you've dropped the ambulance contribution number down $3,500.
I would have to have Mr. Little check the contract. It hasn't changed.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was over budgeted last year. You know, it's so much per ambulance and,
Yeah.
you know, what the fixed number is. Maybe he could check that for us.
Mr. Little? Sure. Thank you.
I have a question, and I'm not picking on you guys, but I see it coming up in the budget here and there. I think this is probably a Mr. Lally question.
You get
So-
two,
For example, the radio equipment and repair and maintenance, its 2014 actual is 0.
30.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Which one are you looking at?
Paul, you want to repeat your
Yeah,
question?
I was asking if, on page
He's asking
29A,
a question, guys.
radio equipment repair and maintenance, the 2014 budget was 1,000, the 2015 budget is 1,000, but the 2014 actual is 0. Not picking on these guys, but I've seen that come up from time to time throughout the budget. Why would that be 0? Is there truly no expense, or is it just something not added yet?
It could be an encumbrance that hasn't been paid yet. It could also be something that does not come, or is not due and payable towards the end of the year. So we may not have expended anything in that particular line item at this time.
Okay.
I mean, the 0, or it could be indicative that it's no longer needed, because that also happens in some places in the budget where you may go 4 fiscal periods with nothing in that line item. It should be taken out. But when you're putting this in progress, you don't have the time to make all those changes until your final product. And I'll check into that for you. I'm not sure why this particular item is 0 actual versus 1,000 budgeted. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Paul, that is a maintenance contract that they have with, the municipality has with one vendor that is a third-party vendor, not a direct vendor that does the services. So if they want to take it out of this line or where they're taking it from doesn't bother us.
Right,
You know, but I can tell you that we're not really happy with the service that the company does provide. And we have breached that conversation several months with Mr. Little, went out and looked for other vendors, but they were like double the price, so we kind of sat back. And your question regarding 35,000 is correct.
Okay.
So the budget is the right number, it did go down.
Oh, okay,
So it
good.
must have been wrong before Scott was able to do it. We had two other subjects. One is, I don't know if it goes into the capital or the operating, but Truck 4 that the municipality has. A number of months ago, Mr. Lowe, you would remember, we came to you that it had a great deal of rust and it needed some welding and a lot of other things done to it. We asked Station 4 to hold off and just do the emergency work that needed to be done and come up at the budget season now and present that we would like to see it in the budget because there was no budget category to do any paint repair, rust repair to the ladder truck. Ladder truck is
11 years old.
11 years old. We have to get 9 more years out of it, and there is a great deal of rust and body repair needed. Scott, how much?
It's a lot of cosmetic paint work that needs done to the body and the back of the truck and the ladder. There's a lot of rust spots, and we were concerned that it wasn't going to pass annual ladder testing because of the rust, but it did. There's no structural damage with the ladder itself.
Have you
Do you
got
have a
costs?
figure?
Yeah,
You have? What's the
about
cost?
$12,000.
12,000.
So I'm not sure if you're going to do a capital budget, not do a capital budget, but that is an issue that we are asking to, for some consideration. The last item, and then we're completely done. I know you went over the training center, but at the suggestion of Jim Johns over there, JJ, you asked us to get creative.
Yes, sir.
And as you know, for the training center, and I don't know if everybody knows it or not, May of this coming year, we are going to hold the first annual Monroeville Public Safety Training Weekend. The Convention and Visitors Bureau, or Visit Monroeville, is donating funds to do the convention center, and we're going to be inviting thousands of people to come to town, use the hotels, and go through education. The funding that it raises is going to come to the municipality for the training center.
I think that's great. I did,
So-
I'm on the CVB board with Sean Logan, and I did hear about
Right.
that. I think
That's going to be in May?
May of next year,
All the proceeds from that will go to the municipality.
right. And we're
For the
working.
training center.
Yeah.
For the training center. We're working with Mr. Little on the logistics to it and the documentation for the funding and, all the different things, but it is under planning. We've been working on it now for about 5 months, so that funding is an avenue. Most of you know that we had another idea that we have been researching and working on for funding for the training center, and that one has had some rocky roads, I guess you could say. Sports Illustrated's allowed to have things, but we're not allowed, I guess. So we are trying to be creative. We are looking at things. One of the other things that we are looking at is a fire department billing cycle for billing and collection. Mr. Little meets with the fire chiefs on a monthly basis, and we are inviting a company in that specializes in the topic of billing insurance companies for usage of fire department services. It would call for an ordinance, it would call for the lawmakers, I have to be standard for Monroeville, but we are looking at that and exploring it.
And this company would just be paid a percentage of what they receive, basically.
I'm not sure the answer to all that. We got literature from them. We have a lot of questions. I asked them to make it to a meeting next week. They couldn't. They're coming in from another section of Pennsylvania, so it probably won't be till the next monthly meeting we have. And I'm not sure how they do it. They claim that that most homeowners have homeowners insurance or vehicles have vehicles insurance, and it has coverages for fire protection.
That we've never billed before in the past.
We have never billed. There is a state law that permits it. Different insurance companies cover it and don't cover it. Whatever they would come up and show us examples of what other communities have done, it would mean that your neighbor would, God forbid, have a fire. We would be asking them to submit it to their insurance company. If it is a process that we want to do or not want to do, I don't know at this point. I think we have to look at it and,
it's worth exploring.
Explore it and look at due diligence. Like I say, JJ, asked us, look at different ways and work with it, and we're trying to.
I
That's it.
appreciate that. I think it's great.
Can I ask you, I'm going to ask you the same question, it's going to end up with Mr. Yugas eventually. In regard to these false fire alarms, how much money do you think it gets burned by these false calls when you send all this out? And there's a guy sitting there with a screwdriver messing with the panel that didn't alert the borough, the dispatch, to the fact that they're working on the fire panel.
I wouldn't know a dollar amount. I would say it's thousands of dollars a month.
Okay.
And we have been working with Mr. Yugas and his department and the police and with our own dispatch center, that they're coordinating it so that the repetitive calls are getting notifications of the false alarms, and I believe they're sending out some invoices. If it was up to me, I would do it higher amount. I would be as strict as could be, because it's a danger to all our people.
I agree. I agree.
Right now, we're allowing 4 false alarms. I think that's.
Is that also on, that's also on the fire?
No, that's.
Or
That's-
what, a quarter?
Hold on.
A month?
No, Paul, how many is it a year?
Hold on. With if there is somebody working on the system, it is an automatic fine. There is no.
That's not one of the
There's no
freebies.
grace period.
Okay.
If somebody's working on the system and it sets off the fire system and the fire department responds, it's an automatic $500 fine.
And does that even cover the cost of them to start the engines and pull out of the garage?
Well, that I can't tell. I mean, we could raise the fine. I mean, we
I mean, I'm
have,
just asking, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a costly little call.
We agree. It's also a pain in the,
Yeah, we know where.
But I'd have
Yes.
to go back to the insurance stuff, Harold.
yes.
You will check on that, go into
Yes.
detail, because I don't want to have any more costs. Let's just say my neighbor's house burns and their insurance, you file the insurance, we pass this ordinance. They may get a raise in their insurance rates.
That's all good questions. We discussed it
I hate to
at
see
our
that
meeting.
burden more.
Right, we discussed it at
I have
our
a lot of
last
seniors
meeting,
here.
that we don't want it to be a burden, and we wanted to ask those questions. I have asked a couple insurance agents, and they told me that it's similar to, what's a good way to, like a glass coverage. You break your glass window, it's not a direct liability like you running down the road and having a wreck, so.
So like comprehensible is what you're
I
saying.
am told that
Comprehensive
Plum already does it.
Tim just said there's other municipalities that do
Yeah.
that.
Right, yeah.
So, but again, I would still like to do a little more research on that. I hope.
And
I'm
this
sure
would be
you'll
the
do your due diligence.
municipality doing the billing. And it'd be the municipality collecting it and having the legal authority to do it, and then the funds would come in to the municipality.
Well, if
So-
it's something that can be done, I'm sure everybody would not argue it, but
Right.
again, I just don't want it to burden. We have a lot of seniors here,
Mhm.
and I don't want to burden them any more than
Very true.
of course we have to.
Chief Fays also mentioned to you that the replacement, the new engine that you approved, they do have a tentative buyer for it. They're no in the very near future. So those funds will be coming into the specialty account, so.
What specialty?
Hi, Sean.
Council, any other questions
What's special about it?
for either gentleman?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul and Joanne, we're going to call you up next. Paul, you're going to hang in there. You sit with us, so sit with us.
Are you serious?
What are you looking at?
Yes, I am.
Your chair is more comfortable anyway.
What is it you're looking at?
Okay.
What page you want to start?
44A would be our first one that we'd be talking about here. We could go back to 3365, but we don't have any expenses there. 3365's expenses all come out of Mike's. What we can do is tell you that under 3365 on the revenue side of it, we have increased our revenue because we are adding an additional pavilion up there. So you will see additional revenues from 3365. Again, Mike's department has the expenses, we have the revenue side of it, so between the pavilions and the beer permits and different things like that, you will see an increase in revenue on that side over there, and you'll see, it's reflected in there too.
What page is that?
Yeah.
Go back to revenues, it's gonna be under, I'm
Page
right here.
39,
Okay, I'm sorry, 38, page 38. Under the revenue side, you will see an increase that we did add a couple $1,000s for the pavilion rental, for the beer permits, wedding ceremonies, and also some different revenue that we're going to raise. And also, too, what I'm going to do with conversations with different things with Nick and stuff like that, I'm also, too, going to pull out of the pavilion rentals the tournaments that we have and put that into a different line item that we never did before. So with the help of Sean, we're going to be able to show that line item,
Great.
of what's coming in from those tournaments and stuff like that. So you get a
We've had,
better
yeah, we've had a
idea.
lot of questions in the
Yeah.
Recreation and Parks Advisory Board about
Yeah.
the breakdown of that,
Right.
so that'll be
So,
perfect.
yeah, so we're going to do a line item there too, and we're also going to put a couple other line items based on some agreements that we're working on with some other, we've also talked to Sean about maybe putting in a soccer line item, a baseball line item for some funds that they help us with and stuff like that we spoke about in the past. So we will definitely be changing some things from a line item standpoint to give a better reflection on what really is going on there. So again, that's under the 3365. So I just want to give you an idea on that there.
4,600, I also increased the fees for Camp Chapewee.
What page?
Which page we on now?
That is on page 40 in revenue, too.
Yeah, if we're just looking at the revenue, if you want to stay with that, it's up to you, but I think more in line with the expenses, you will see definitely some things. And that's a good point, Joanne, while you're there, stay in there.
What has happened with that is, we've always charged $11 a day for Monroeville residents. These are special need camp, they go 6 weeks in the summer from 10 to 2. Actually, I was approached by some parents saying, hey, I know you're trying to do the best you can for our kids, but charge us a little more. So I increased the rate $3 a day for non-residents, which non-residents is $25 a day for the kids. Residents is $13 a day for kids. It's a wonderful program. Do we make money on it? No. Do we lose money on it? Yes. It usually costs municipality probably about $2,000 a year. That's after the fees from the campers.
That's for the whole 6 weeks and for everyone that
For the whole
goes?
6 weeks and everything. But, I mean, we're one of the few communities still in the Pittsburgh area that offers a special needs camp for individuals, and
Just like Camp Chapewee?
yes, it is.
Just
So
keep doing the Camp
I-
Chapewee.
Yes.
Great program.
That's a great program.
Yeah, so we did increase the fees on
It
those.
stayed on 4,600, Sean, you can make a change. It's 0 for line item 1 there, Hawkeye House rent, it's actually should be 4,500. So you get to make a change there for yourself. Add that, it's 0 right now, it says 0, but it should be $4,500. So, go on to 4,500, you'll see in regards to expenses, staying with 44A. The only thing we really did was made some minor changes with Joanne's postage for her book that goes out, so postage increase, and also too, you'll only see contractor fees to our rec track system, that it usually increases a couple $100. So you'll see that's the only thing that we actually increased in that whole department there.
And we don't even know postage is going up. That's just a buffer in case we don't ever know what the post office is going to do.
Amen to that.
I don't remember the answer to this question. I probably should remember. The kids this year,
Yeah.
what are we doing with that this year?
On page 45A, we're going to 4,600. That's kind of where we are. We didn't make no changes there, but that is where Mr. Johns is asking about the Park Leader Program. Currently, it is not in there. I figured it out, it's probably roughly around an additional $30,000. Now, keeping in mind that in 2014's budget, if you look at the actual, it says $6,049. We're pretty much done in that department. For some reason, there's more in there than should have been in there. So if you maintain, we're only increasing it an additional, I would say about $15,000, and that includes, that's if you put everybody out there into all the parks that we've had in the past.
And which
One
ones
of the
were
things,
that had the park?
that's our main parks, which would be Alpine, Evergreen, Overlook, Pioneer, Hawkeye, Beechwood over Ramsey, I missed one, and over Mr. Johns' area, Ferndale. So those areas there, we had some of the things, if you don't
The
mind.
reason I get people still
Sure.
asking me about.
There are some of those
Wow.
parks that do miss it, and Nick's, with Steve's, Bellwood is another one. I think, there's a lot of kids over there that is justifiable that, if you wanted to add those on. I think overall the program has lost its luster. Kids don't come out as much, we don't have as many kids in Monroeville out doing things. They're
The
out doing
residents
different things.
that contacted me sure don't feel that way.
Again, I'm
Right,
not
but there's
saying, I'm not saying, overall, all the places.
Can
It's
I-
harder to get to
So
different locations.
Are we thinking of putting this back in some of the more
Well, it was an
populated-
opportunity, speaking with Mr. Little, he said, be prepared for it. It's not in there currently, but we can.
It's in the budget message.
It's in his budget message?
I have an idea and a suggestion to council that might help that situation, and it might help it in a fashion that you don't have to put them where they're not needed. Last year, council got to hire or pick one summer help person, to employ a youth with the municipality. What would there be any problem with giving council 2 picks next year? And if he wanted to put one of them in a park, put it in.
I think with that is a good idea, but I think Mike's really is one that struggles. He's the one that really needs the guys out there in public works.
But I'm saying if we get,
I think the recreation.
I'm not discrediting that, and also too, to add to that, Linda asked if we can go out and maybe look at some different interns and stuff like that.
Right.
It's a possibility. The problem with the interns is, and what we found is we need them for 9 weeks. Most of the interns are already doing a 4-week program. That's all they're really doing. Now, so if you want to look at different ones, I would need almost 20 kids to cover that program. I don't know if I can find that many interns, but if we can find any, that will reduce the
It will
cost.
reduce the cost. Okay.
And we also, too, can look at lessen the hours. When you start doing that, what you're going to start finding is you're not going to get as many kids because they want to work that 8-hour day. You know what I mean? They're looking for something. What Ron's suggesting is a great idea. It would really help, but again, it's there, because it's right around $30,000 is what the program is.
Could you give us a break,
Sure.
I know that you kept a count of how many kids were going
Sure.
to these programs.
And I gave that.
Yeah, and there are some parks that
Yeah.
definitely were getting used, and there were some other ones
Absolutely.
that were definitely to the
Absolutely.
wayside.
Yeah, I mean, Bellwood
So we
was
could
one,
streamline.
Ferndale was one.
And there were some
Yeah.
parks that, we had a daycare that was
Sure.
using, we have a
Sure.
private daycare that's, people are paying to send their kids there, and they're walking their daycare kids over to our parks program, we're paying for it.
Right.
We have other parks where you might have, two kids, the same two kids the whole
Sure.
summer.
Yeah.
That's why I said if
And I think
council
maybe we could
gets to
spend the
pick-
money better somewhere in the rec
But
department,
we
whether
need
it
that
be.
directed from you. You have the count, so.
Sure, I can provide the counts, and I have provided the counts, even like I says, I know the parks right now that show up with their lunch in the morning, and they're there all day, and that's 10, 12 kids, and Bellwood's one of them, it really
Okay.
is.
Well, something I think you need to think when you're thinking all this too, and nothing against the park leader program, please. Not at all, because anything for a department is good. Last year, since we cut out the park leader program, our day camps soared.
Which we generate revenue from.
Sure.
Exactly.
And we did the same thing with sports programs, too.
In the past, we've only taken 25 campers, because that's all we can get on the Convention Visitors Bureau bus. Last year, the average was 29 I was taking. How was I doing that when that many kids won't fit on the bus? I actually had parents that said, okay, my kid will skip the field trip. Just let them come to camp those 4 days in the week. And they paid the full rent, that's fee. That's how bad they wanted to come to camp. So even I went as high as 31 some weeks. So we sold out every week and exceeded it, which we've never done ever since I've been here. What I am going to do for this summer, it's going to be a 2-phase camp program. I'm going to try it. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm going to say for my normal camp and a field trip every week, I'll take 26 campers. In addition to that, I'm going to have a Tier 2 camp that I'll take an additional 20 campers. Those campers will go the 4 days of the week with the 26, but on field trip day, since we can't take them, they're going to go to the pool. So I may have to increase staff to accommodate this many campers, but it'll generate a lot more revenue, as well as it'll help the pool bring in additional revenue.
And I
So
think that's a better way to spend the
That's-
$30,000.
that's
Sure,
my
we did the
plan,
same thing with
yeah.
sports programs. We added them on this year and then they took off. They really did. Again, there's certain people, there's certain areas, I think there's two ways of looking at it, I guess what I'm saying to you.
Well, you need to
Some
say them
areas, I think need it because of, it's just the way it is, the way the structure of that area is. They kind of need
In
it.
other words, they have more kids in that area, maybe.
Right. Yeah, so, there are ways of looking at it, but I agree that the program has really ran Joe and I said, like I've spoken about a number of times, it's really run its course, and even Tim and I've had it's tough. We don't get as many kids as we used to. It used to be crazy, but now it's not.
But now
But I can show
our other
numbers for
programs
it.
are growing, though.
I can show numbers, and I'll send it to all of you guys. I'll show the last how many years, or how many kids we've had in the park. And like Nick said, you might see 6 kids in that park, because we do a morning and an afternoon. It might be the same 3 kids.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it might be, but we do, that's how I do it. I can do it.
Somebody's babysitting.
yeah.
Right.
That's kind of what's happened. And we've had some issues with that. But again, I'm not saying it's a bad program. It just kind of lost its luster a little bit. But we'll gladly take a look at it. I can tell you it's around $27,000 for the kids, about $1,000 in supplies, medical supplies. We're maybe just under $30,000, maybe 28,
But I think that money
29,000.
could, go a lot farther in the rec department, whether it's, what you were describing, Joanne, that kind of staffing, or maybe what Ron's suggesting is that, I know Public Works, they always need more guys to help with the parks,
Sure.
like, which
Two
is still
birds
parks,
with
it's still
one
parks,
Yeah.
parks and recreation, but actually maintaining the parks.
Sure.
And then recently, we have maintenance issues in the parks. This year alone, there's $40,000
Sure, which, yeah.
of
that's gonna
upkeep that
come
we
in
have
front
to
of you.
currently do, so.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of allocating that money, but maybe not necessarily to the park host, or the park,
That's something for you
Park
guys to
program.
decide,
Right.
yeah,
park leader program.
yeah. And if you want to look at different parks for, it's like if he has it, I want it. I don't know, that's something you guys have to decide. There are some parks that maybe
If
could
there
be
are
justified.
parks that,
All I know is in Ferndale Park as an example.
I don't disagree with you.
When they were there, there was a lot of activity.
Yeah.
When they weren't there, the activity went away.
Yeah.
And this doesn't help you a lot, but in your budget of $6,500 for porta-johns,
Yeah.
you could eliminate the one in Ferndale Park.
Sure.
And I told that to the driver 3 times when he was unlocking the gate, going, I said, why are you going down there? You and I both know there's nothing down there.
Yeah, well, it's there, that's just the way Public Works has always done it.
I understand.
They've kept it there.
Yeah,
It's not
I
in my budget, it's actually in Mike's,
No,
but you're.
I understand.
Yeah, if you're not gonna have, you still get people down there, but it's usually just people from up above
Right.
walking their dog and going back home. They're not down there, but it's set up that way.
I understand.
Well, if you get us a breakdown of like the park leader, like the numbers, the
Absolutely, I
specifics,
can give
that'd
you
be
the
great.
numbers for each park
that'd be
location, what
great.
happened, the last couple of years I
That'd
can
be
give it to you.
helpful.
I think I gave it to Steve, but I can reprint it off and I can get it to you guys. I'll give it to
That would
all
be
of you.
good.
Okay.
Would be good.
Just to give you a breakdown of what the numbers were.
Oh, then we
the
know,
last
what
couple
we're- then we
years.
know what we're looking
Right.
at. I mean,
Yeah, like I tell you what
make more
Evergreen had,
sense.
how many that
Yes.
had. I'll
Sure.
give you, just give me a couple of days but I'll figure it out and do it for you. That's no problem whatsoever.
Great.
Any other questions for either Joanne or?
That's 4,600. Under 4,700, we've only increased just the rental and structure of buildings, $6,000. You know, I don't want
Where are
to
we
kind of
at
go back to 46A.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back down, just increase 1,000 because I really require some additional gym time for a program. You know, I don't want to go down there again. I'm just saying, that's just, I really need the additional money there, so that's really all it is.
And one thing too, you mentioned to Doug Cole about using his different buildings and things. I do utilize them when we're able to. I held driver's ed at the training center this summer. I've used the training room downstairs at times. I mean, so I try to do that when I can, so I don't even get the school involved. Even a lot of the people I have teaching my classes anymore, like the Integral Ballroom or the yoga folks, they're very attractive to me because they want to hold the classes in their studio. So it helps them, it helps us. So I mean, I do a lot of that anymore, but there are instances like the pool at the high school, I can't do that. So things like that, so I mean, I do look to utilize what we have without, going any further.
And just to go back, I don't mean to go back, but under 44A, I do need to add on an extra $500 for seminar expenses, because I didn't realize my one has lapsed. I need to go back and get my
Where?
44A under seminar expenses.
Okay.
It's 500, it has to go to 1,000, because I have to go back and get my playground safety inspection class. I have to get that recertified. And then I also have to get this, it's a National Youth Seminar, so it has to go up to 1,000. The traveling expenses, I don't know if they're what would be there. I'll try and, I can actually take the test for the online, which I'll do. But that has to go up just for another $500.
It is what it is.
I know we never had it in the past, but unfortunately, as you guys are well aware, we go to 4,900, we're losing our manager. Ryan's not coming back this year under the pool. So we are losing him, and between Jen and myself, there's some additional training that we need to get done. I think somebody asked about the chemicals and stuff like that. I am certified to do that. It's a pesticide thing. I'm a certified pool operator, and I will get my pesticides done this year. I can't remember, I think Mike actually is too. Mike Strom, I think he is too. But I don't know if it's for pool, but I think he is too, so we do have a backup there. So they do have ways of covering each other. We try to help cover the other pools and stuff like that with the pesticides.
Does
So-
Kevin have Kevin?
I don't think Kevin does. It's a not easy class. I mean, I don't think Kevin does. I think at the time, I want to say Mike did because he used to do the pool, and then Joey does it, but I'm not sure if he has it or not. I'm not sure what guys do have it there. But
And other guys have CPOs. Hizzy.
just Jen and I and Ryan
and Jen
at the
and Ryan.
time. That's
Okay.
it.
But now you're
yeah.
down to 2 people.
Just down to
with it.
2, right? Exactly. So it might behoove us to maybe get Johnny to do it or something like that. It's not that difficult for that one, but it's something we probably shouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, sign
We're
him
not
up for more
certified
work.
to have a
He
certified
doesn't work
pool.
enough.
Huh? What's that?
John Hizzy doesn't
Oh,
work
no,
enough.
no, I'm not
Let's give him
volunteering
some
at
more
all.
stuff. How about that?
But
He doesn't
he's
work
there
enough.
constantly, or even John Float, or them guys are there all the time, so it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for them.
Right.
But you're not really required to have a certified pool operator when the pool's open. You're not required to have that. Just need to be there to check it and check your levels and stuff like that. So it's not like somebody has to be there all the time. That's not required whatsoever. Perfect. So, okay.
One thing I forgot to mention, Summer Concert Series is continuing to be sponsored by UPMC. They've done it since the inception of the program. I'm hoping again for 15 they'll come on board. So within the next couple months, I'll get a letter out, and hopefully it covers the total expense. Few dollars here and there over. We do keep the $10,000 in our budget because we just never know. Some year UPMC is going to say, sorry, we can't do this, and would hate to lose this program for the residents.
I mean, that's something that Sean's going to help us out. When we get the money, he's going to go right into that line, because, again, trying to find it was kind of a nightmare, but
Yeah.
Sean and Darlene, they've all really worked
Yes.
hard to try and figure it out, but we've kind of figured it out. It's
Yeah.
the process. It's part of his $4 million he has, right, Paul?
10.
10. So, and then 4,900, basically, nothing's gone up as far as expenses goes. Unfortunately, this year, we didn't have the greatest pool weather that we would like. I did not supply you with the report, and it wasn't because I was hiding it, I just never got to it as far as giving it to you guys. I did give it to the Park and Rec, but we lost right around $1,500, which quite honestly is a blessing, especially the fact that we actually bought a brand-new motor. And the motor we had it replaced was roughly around $2,700. So we're definitely maintaining there. So that's a good thing. And I'm actually currently working with a grant with Duquesne Light with the possibility of, it's a variable speed thing with the pool. So when the pool's not, like the pool runs 24/7, it runs at the highest RPMs it can. Well, right now, there's Duquesne Light has something, and I have a gentleman that's helping us doing it for free. It's going to cost me dinner. And we're going to actually get this, and Duquesne Light will pretty much cover the entire cost. So when the pool shuts down at 8 o'clock, that motor will ramp itself down. And then come the next morning, it'll start ramping itself back up again, which will recover our energy costs same within a year. So I'm working with that, Duquesne Light. They'll pay for almost everything but a couple $100. So we're working on that grant right now, and it's still out there. So,
Right.
so it's an opportunity
And
there
I can
to-
attest, Paul is a pool czar. He is. I mean, they don't have any extra buttons there. They don't have any extra anything there if they don't need it. So he keeps a real tight handle on it all.
So that's it that I can think of. I mean, we have a lot of positive things going up. We are looking for some different revenue generators. Nick and I are working together trying to figure out some opportunities for advertising that we've never had the opportunities to do in the pool or at the in the parks. I think we're maybe communicating with Mr. Dice a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that would require an ordinance from council to look into tweaking some things. In the past, no advertising was permitted at all in any of the parks. And then when the community park came along, there was some language where they could do some things there, but the money went to the Monroeville Foundation and not to the municipality. So we're maybe talking and all with the Rec Advisory Board as far as maybe some opportunities for some of the other parks on a smaller scale if we can
generate some
Generate some
money
revenue
there.
and do it the right way.
And we continue to look for grants and stuff like that. As you well know, that CITF grant came through, and we just had a meeting last week, and I don't mean to hold anybody else up, Paul, but the idea is that we're actually going to be we're actually going to be the phase one of this project, it looks like. So it looks like it might happen our end before the far end. You can, if you want to say anything on that, but
That's good information.
I mean, it's going to be a great opportunity that that trail could really come to fruition here pretty quickly. So we just had a meeting about that, so it's pretty cool. So,
Any questions for either of our folks?
Thank you.
Paul,
Thank you.
Joanne?
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Joanne, what's
Oh,
the
we
next
saved
event?
the best for last, and that's you, Mr. Hughes.
Paul, make it quick.
Hurry
Hang
up.
on, folks.
Hold on, next event will be Letters for Santa and Snacks with Santa. Letters for Santa is a program where children can drop off letters either at the library or our office, and Santa Claus sends his elves during the night to come and get the letters. And he answers them and sends a reply to the children's homes.
You're in my chair.
The next event after that is on December 6th at Monroeville Volunteer Fire Department. They graciously let us use their hall.
Which hall?
Number 4, from 10 to 12, and it'll be Snacks with Santa. We'll have Santa, of course. People bring their children, have pictures taken with him. Snacks, cookies, crafts, all kinds of different things. So it's a nice family event indoors this year since the fire hall is available again. The only other thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to leave because you just want to get moving, is the winter brochure is at the publishers. I'm hoping to have it in residents' mailboxes the week of Thanksgiving. Majority of programs will run from January through the end of March. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank
Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you.
Dun, 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 dun.
See, we saved the best for last, Paul, and that's you.
You said that once.
I know, I was trying to make you feel better.
He's trying to convince himself.
Quickly.
All right, I handed out the packets to you before the meeting, my typical packet. The cover page is a list of all the departments with the page numbers, who's in each department. The second page is the flow chart of the department. who's in them, what grouping they're in. Pages 3, 4, 5, and 6 is basically a snapshot of all the permits that have been issued to date from January 1st to date. And that's a combination of all the departments, building, fire protection, zoning, the community development, everything together on those pages. And the last page, page 7, is the monthly activity report with the totals on them to date. That does not include October, to see what the activity level is.
Paul, I do have a question for you on the building occupancy inspections.
Yes.
Are our apartments really cooperating when folks move in and out?
Well, it's interesting you say that. If you look on page 4, about 3/4 of the way down, you have 3 numbers that are within paragraphs there that I wrote a number of 1,287. That's the total of those 3 numbers, which puts us on what those 3 are. First of all, the first number, which is 937, that is the apartment inspections. So whenever somebody moves out of their apartment before anybody else occupies it, the building inspector has to go and inspect that. That's 937 to date. The next number down is 59. And what that is the rental properties. So if somebody has a single-family home and they're renting it out, before the next occupant can move in, they have to have an inspection done. The third number down, which is 291, is for real estate transactions. So if you're selling your single-family home, you have to have an inspection done. So those 3 numbers added together are 1,287 to this point, which projects out to about 1,600 for the year. In 2010, the system was implemented. So 2011 was the full year of a full program. In 2011, we had 1,285. We're on pace for 1,600 this year. So to answer your question is, yes, they are.
Good.
And we're seeing good results. I mean, this has given us an opportunity to get in, look at the apartment complexes, looking at the rental homes. When we look at the rental properties, it's not only the interior, it's the exterior, it's the property. It's a way to try to keep the codes up.
Is this every apartment in Monroeville?
Every apartment.
Now, if we get into the low income,
Yes, Cambridge Square.
that's my
Government-
next question.
government
Who's
subsidized.
responsible for paying that bill?
To us, it really doesn't matter, but it's typically the apartment complex who pays it.
I understand, I was just curious.
Yes.
Got it.
Council,
was your
any
question.
questions for Mr. Hugus?
And to answer your question, Mrs. Gatos, Mr. Harvey, about the false fire alarm. That is an automatic fine. If there is a technician working on the system and they do not put the fire department on hold and their dispatch, it's an automatic $500 fine. When that was put into place, which was probably 2010 also, I think that particular year, and I gave Ron the stats one time, I think we had 15 or 16 violations that year. Now, it has dropped dramatically. I mean, if you even look last year, the actuals for last year was $3,000, so that's 6 violators last year, and we've had a couple this year. So they have dropped dramatically. Some of them are repeat offenders, they
Now,
should
on a
know better.
repeat, do you double the fine?
No, we don't.
The ordinances is what it is.
Okay.
What department is this?
But, Paul, Ron brought a good point up. Why do we give him 4 freebies? He was saying 2. And
No.
is that too strict?
We don't give them any freebies. If there's a technician working on a
No,
system.
no. We're talking about 4 false alarms. He's
If-
saying drop it.
If there's, what we define them as nuisance alarms, it's a staircase progression. You get 2 frees, and then from there on out, each time it goes off within a certain period of time, the fine is raised more. But there's 2 free ones within, I believe, 2-week period. We don't have a whole lot of nuisance alarms anymore. We've sort of taken care of that one, too.
Once again, council, any questions for Mr. Hugus?
I have a question.
I thought Shufo did this. Shufo does, I'm just
No.
confused. I thought he did the zoning stuff and this stuff.
Well, that's not the zoning. That comes under the building inspections.
That's you?
That's my group. All right. So if you want to start, 2,300, the revenues are on page 33. Under your building permits, you're going to see some different numbers there throughout the years. And what I can contribute that to is our building permits are about the same amount over the last couple of years. Where you see the influx of money is when you have these big boxes that are new. The hospital, when they built the hospital, we had a tremendous amount of building permit fees just because of the size of the building. Cinemark, when that building was built, you had an influx in building permit fees. So that's why those numbers are sort of skewed from year to year. But typically, we're still on pace with the same amount of building permits per year.
Just out of curiosity, what's miscellaneous, what falls under miscellaneous? It's not huge, it's just
No, it isn't huge.
a curious question.
1 second. I don't have that listed, Paul, but I could find out for you. A lot of times what happens is that if there's a,
Anything else doesn't fall in the other ones.
I'll stay.
yeah, exactly. If it's a permit that comes in and they don't know where to put it, you put it under miscellaneous.
That never happens either.
Counterintuitive.
The expenses for 2,300 are under expense 27 and 27A. Nothing has changed with those line items from last year to this year, other than the increases in the benefit costs. Pretty good with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Move on, brother.
2350, there is no revenue page for 2350, that's covered under 2300. So your expenses are expense 28 and 28A.
Why are your retirees on there?
Retiree benefits are reflected in the budget under each individual.
You have Freddie Otto and
Mhm.
2350. When did he work there?
Before me.
He always worked at Public Works, but that's okay, guys.
He was shown under my budget. Yeah. So 2350, I don't believe anything changed. Anything was increased from last year, except for the healthcare and benefits.
Any
So-
questions, council?
Sean, under wearing apparel, that number 1250, that should be 1125.
1125.
Yeah.
Continue, Paul.
Okay, 5100, revenues on page 43.
Questions, council, for Mr. Hugus?
None.
I'll just give you this real quick comment about the community development under the land development section. When I talk about land developments, I talk about site plan, subdivision, conditional uses, things that you typically will see, whenever there's a new project coming through. We're on pace to have about 22 applications this year, compared to 3 or 4 years ago where you had 10. So we're seeing a much increase in land development applications than we have in the past, so that's a good sign.
It's a good thing.
That's a good sign.
Anything else for us, Paul?
Under 5100, no, the expenses are under 48 and 48A. Any questions? All right, next is 5,200, which is Planning Commission.
Wait a second.
Those numbers are pretty much the same as last year.
Wait, did we already do 48A?
No, we had a question.
I just did that.
Oh, I'm just wondering why the salary went up so much.
That salary actually should be in 6,100. That is for what Tim put in his pages about a new engineering inspector.
Okay, can I
But
get,
that comes out of 6,100, not 5,100.
but it's showing in 51?
It shows it in 51, it should be in 61.
Should be in 61.
But it's showing, okay, but, and then we'll discuss the reason for that person?
Sure.
When, now or when we get to 61?
Whenever you would like.
Your pleasure.
One that likes to jump around.
Well, he had me on 51, and that's where the money is, so.
That'll be his last thing, 61, so.
Good point.
Continue there, Paul.
It was mistakenly put in 60.
Yeah.
I added that
51.
to the wrong line.
Okay.
It should have been in 6,100.
This is unacceptable.
Go ahead, Paul.
All right, 5,200 is on 49 of 49A, which is the Planning Commission.
It's predominantly the same.
It's the same.
53.
5,300 would be the next page, which is the zoning hearing board. Probably the only thing of significance there is the reduction in salaries of temporary employees because of reduction in members to the ZHB.
6,100 or Paul.
All right, 6,100. The salary increase that was in 5,100 should be in 6,100. And as Tim put in his budget message, we're looking for a new person. We can't keep up with the work. If you look on page 7 of your package that I gave you, at the bottom lines, you have the PA1 call responses to street opening permits, address changes, and miscellaneous field inspections. Currently, we only have one engineering inspector, that's Jamie Story. He, and Dominic failed to mention this, I told this to Dom, he has actually been spending a lot of his time working on traffic signals also, because Dominic was getting busy with public works, he didn't have time to do it. You have to have a certain certification from the IMSA to work on traffic signals, because they're basically computers. They're run by computers. Jamie went through the certification classes. He is a level 2 certified through IMSA to work on traffic signals. So he's spending a lot of his time working on traffic signals. So there's a lot of duties there that are, if they're getting done behind schedule. I mean, you obviously had a few people standing at the podium this year complaining because they were either emailing, calling, or coming to the office and not getting responses, and that's because of saturation of work.
Okay, but if we put a new guy at the garage that frees Dom up, then he's on the signals, and that frees Jamie up, and then,
Well, it will free up some time for Dominic, I agree. You got to remember, though,
but then that frees up Jamie. You're saying Jamie's picking up for Dom, but if Dom's picking up for himself, then that's gonna free Jamie up.
that's correct, but a lot of times, the work that they do, the two of them do together. You have, how should I explain it? A lot of the work they got to do together in the field. So although Dominic will have some time freed up, Jamie will have some time freed up, they still need, there's a lot of work to be done on the traffic signals. There are 42 of them, they're aging, they need repaired. If they're not working right, we all know about it.
Any qualifications for this engineer?
Yeah, it would be, I'm looking for somebody to probably have an associate's degree in the engineering field, an associate's degree, yes. But anyway, if you look back at your seat at the PA1 calls, those are a labor-intensive job to do. It's a daily function.
What is a
You
PA1
can imagine.
call? May I interrupt you?
I'm sorry?
May I interrupt? What is a PA1 call?
PA1 call. Anybody that does excavation has to make a Pennsylvania 1 call by law.
Okay, I understand.
And the municipality is responsible to go out and mark their facilities wherever the excavation is going to take place. So you have to go out, and the main two items that we're responsible for are the traffic signal components and the storm source. Now, just recently, some of you attended the meeting with PennDOT, which I had some further discussion with PennDOT, that the municipality, and I don't know if Mike put it in his budget, the municipality is responsible for inspection of all storm sewers on state roadway systems and repair. So tonight, if there's a storm sewer on Route 22 that needs fixed, Monroeville Public Works has to go fix it. It's a burden that the state has put on us.
No, it's been on the books, so they just started enforcing.
That's correct. It's been on the books since 1945, but they have
That's
recently
correct.
invoked it. So you can think about all the state roadway systems we have in town. Now that we're going to be responsible for the storm source systems, we have to inspect them and repair them if they need repaired. And just going and repairing them is a problem in its own. It isn't like in today's world where Public Works just go fixes it. You have to submit a permit application to PennDOT with the documents of how you're going to repair it. They have to approve it before you're even allowed to do the work on it.
And shut Route 22 down and do it.
That's right, exactly.
Good luck.
The other time-consuming project is the MS4 testing that we've talked about several times. And, that's a labor-intensive project, and it's ongoing. It's something that's just going to continue to grow. And having somebody out in the field documenting everything, it takes a lot of time. It's not enough time for one person to do.
Paul, for the listening audience, why don't you explain what MS4 inspections are?
The MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Source System, and that is a name that the DEP has placed on. It's sort of what you see with the sanitary system, with the DEP coming down and making mandates on how you deal with sanitary sewer. Now we're going to do with storm sewers. And just recently, there was a big conference at the convention center. The purpose of it was for sanitary sewers, but there was one module about storm sewers. And what came out of it is the DEP is now going to start inspecting individual municipalities to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing with storm sewers. So that day is coming soon. And again, it's a labor-intensive type of thing, going out and inspecting all this. Some of the statistics that that we look at, we have about 80 miles of storm sewers. We have 2,880 storm sewer inlets, about 700 end walls, head walls, and 110 miles of roadway system. Now, we have the state system we have to do also. That's probably something we need to talk to Mike about to see if he put more money into his operational for repair of storm sewers on state roads.
Absolutely not.
This hiring, would it alleviate any of our costs to Chester?
Yes.
Can you give me a ballpark?
A lot of the operational cost that we paid to Chester was for the MS4 testing. We could basically do most of that in-house now. Because you have to do the inspection, the testing, there's still going to be costs associated with it because you have to do physical testing, take it to a laboratory to get laboratory results back. That will still take place, but we could do all that in-house.
Is Jamie an engineer now?
Yes.
So we can get rid of one of them birds, right?
No, you still need to have them, and the example that I would tell you is that when capital improvement projects come along, is when you need to have them, like when you're designing the Glenwood storm sewer system, or the wall on Old Ramsey Road. Those types of large projects is when you still need to have your consultants.
Right.
Does that answer some of your question there, Linda?
Some.
Well, obviously, there'll be more discussion.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Paul on any of his departments?
And the only other thing I have, Sean, is under 2102, under 6100, that must be a typo because it says 4,550.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 51A under expenditures.
And which line item is that?
Architectural and engineering, 2102. It says 4,550.
Yeah, that should, you had 45,550, is that correct?
No, that should be 20,000.
I don't know where where that came from.
I don't either.
Not 45?
Oh,
No.
45.
20,000.
Yeah, because it, last year was 50,000, it's getting dropped to 20,000. Where's a $30,000 reduction?
Once again, council, any other questions for Mr. Hugus?
I got a quick one, Paul. On your little packet, your handout you gave us, page 5, the permit activity. There's an outdoor, halfway down, outdoor dining,
I'm sorry, Nick, what page you on, buddy?
page 5 of Mr. Hugis's handout,
Yes.
the permit activity. Could you explain that?
Which one, outdoor dining?
Yeah, is that something is that for restaurants?
Yeah, I think you have, if you want to, there's that outdoor dining ordinance, that if you want to include that into your restaurant and outdoor dining, you have to get a permit for that. Sort of what they, like what they did
did at
to.
Dad's.
Like they did at Dad's, that's correct.
Well, we've only had one this year.
According to this, yes, and that's the only one I could think about is.
Makes two of us, I can't think of everybody.
All right.
Once again, council, any other questions for Mr. Hugus?
Yeah, Dad's.
Max and Irma's.
Oh, we're good.
Seeing none, there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, ladies.